let's move into the Friday night game. You've got the Parramatta Eels taking on the Newcastle Knights. Now, Parramatta, they still haven't hit their stride yet this year. They're still struggling. Whereas Newcastle, we just spoke about, didn't play the best game against the Cowboys last week. However, they come into this game with a lot of hope. They've won a couple games now. They're playing good football. They tested the back-to-back premiers the week before, only just going down to a field goal, and now they've only gone just down to the Cowboys. But let's look at the team list. You've got Clint Gufferson, Micah Sivo, Will Penasini, your mate Sean Russell, Hayes Dunster, Dylan Brown, Mitchell Moses, Wiramu Craig comes into that lineup, Josh Hodgson, Junior Paulo, Sean Lane, Ryan Madison, Jermaine Hopgood, Supercoach fans, he's back in the starting lineup. You've got Bryce Cartwright in the 14, Brendan Hands, Matt Dury, Eminem in the 17 jersey with Daddy's boy Jake Arthur in the 18, and you've got Jack Murchie, Ofahiki Ogden, Dijan Assi, and Isaac Lumi in the 22 position. Now, Baxter, I'll throw it across to you. It is a strong side. Obviously, Sean Russell has moved into the centres. Simonson came in last week. He copped a head knock, so Russell's going to go back into that where he was named last week. And obviously, Hayes Dunn comes into the win. And as mentioned, Wiramu Craig comes into the starting lineup with RCG, who could be out. So that's bad news for a New South Wales Blue side. It's bad news for the Parramatta Eels. But what do you make of this side? Not just this week, but obviously the last week as well.
I think last week is a week that you sort of just throw in the bin and forget about it as quickly as possible to move on, because I don't think they played really. No one across the park played any great football from the Parramatta Eels. So, as I said, try and forget about that one as quick as possible and move on to this weekend against the Knights. But, you know, we talk about those hip drops. I think, you know, accidents happening within the game, and you still got to suspend. And if the rule is, if we're sending people to the bin because of a hip drop or looks like a hip drop, sorry, you know, it is what it is. We're ruling it out. We want to rule it out of the game, or we've got to come in hard, and we're sticking to it. And, you know, unlucky for RCG, because I think that was a total accident, a freak accident. And
it's just come in back. So sorry, I'll jump in. Then it's just come up on my phone. RCG is set to miss the next 8 to 10 weeks after it's revealed a groin injury. He will obviously miss game 1 and 2, and most likely won't be selected for game 3. So 8 to 10 weeks for RCG.
I think you just, if I remember Campbell reading it, I just ruled myself out for Origin this year. You know, don't even worry about trying to make it back for game 3. Just let Freddie pick the side how it is, and you just concentrate on yourself getting back fully fit, because you know, Parramatta is going to need you in the back end of that season, trying to push for a finals appearance again. So, yeah, it's not too bad. You know, Sean Russell comes back. You know, he dropped a couple balls. I know I was speaking to his mum, and his mum, you know, could count the amount of times he's ever dropped a ball in his lifetime, and I think he equaled it last weekend. So I think he was worried that he was going to get dropped, but no, he's back in the centres. I think he's playing some okay football to keep that position, and he just needs to gain a little bit of confidence and show why he should keep that jersey regardless of where it is in that back line. But before we go, as we go over to the Knights team list, you know, you got Lachlan Miller in the fullback role, Dominic Young and Greg Marzu in the wing position, Dane Gagai, Bradman Best in the centres. Excuse me. Callum Ponga to make his start at 6. That's the late mail. He won't jump to the bench with Jackson Hastings at 7. Daniel Saifidi and Leo Thompson in the forward position. Phoenix Crossland in the hooker role. Tyson Frizzell, Lachlan Fitzgibbon in the second row. Kurt Mann in the hooker position. Tyson Gamble in the 14. Jacob Saifidi in the bench. Matt Croker, Jack Harrington, and Simi Sagi, Heimel Hunt, Jack Johns, Dylan Lucas, and Adam Clune to round out the extended bench. An unlucky loss last weekend to the Cowboys. You know, you talk about that repeat sets. Good teams will find those repeat sets and convert them into points, but you know, that's just another learning curve for the Knights. And I think you had what's the coach's name for the Newcastle Knights?
Adam O'Brien.
Yeah, I think you had him as the first coach to be sacked, and I think the Knights, the way they're travelling, I think he's safe this year. I reckon he's going to be safe. The boys have really come together and are playing for each other, and the coaching staff and the fans. So it's good to see. Maybe I know the Mail says that Ponga's going to start at 6, but last week it sort of didn't work out for him coming off the bench in the 14 role sort of thing. He looked really out of place. He sort of came on at a weird time, couldn't really inject himself into the game, and by the time he got to that point where he was starting to get in his groove, I think he come off, and it just, yeah, you got to start him. I know I've said before that this team has played better without him whilst he's been out. It's the $1 million man. You can't really leave him out, but there's other players that are on $1 million plus and still playing for some reason. If I had to pick a team, if I had to pick a thing, I'm going to go Eels 1-12 in this game.
Yeah, I've got to agree with you. I think I love to argue with you. And when you say stuff that's already in my head, I kind of don't like it because it means I don't get to argue with you about predictions. You did call Kalen going to the bench last week. And I don't think it was him coming off the bench that was the issue. I think it's like you said, the timing of when you put him in the game. I feel like the game was almost already away from the Newcastle Knights by the time you put him in that game. So he then takes 10, 15 minutes. And like they said on the commentary, I don't think he's ever started a game from the bench. So he's done this whole warm-up. He's then come to the bench and he's gone, fuck, now I've got to warm up again. So I think if you're going to do it, if you're going to stick to that, you've got to do it for a couple of weeks so that he does get used to becoming that impact player off the bench. Heck, you look at the Roosters when they played South Sydney earlier this year, they did that with Brandon Smith, who was used to it with Harry Grant. He comes on, he wins the game for the Roosters, he scores a try. So I think if you're going to put Kalen in the lineup, you're going to put Gamble, you've got to leave it for a couple of weeks. If you reverse it, you've got to keep Kalen on the bench for a couple of weeks and get this team used to that 20, 30, 35-minute hits from one of those players. But I think it's going to be a great game. It's honestly a toss of a coin. Para haven't been good. I think Knights have definitely overachieved. I thought Adam Bryan would have been sacked by now, but obviously he has shown that he deserves to be there. And you know what? The turn of how he's played, the signing of Lachlan Miller, mate, all the credit to him. If that was his decision to sign Lachlan Miller, it's going to go down as one of the best signings of the year because he's up there with the best fullbacks so far this year. So massive props to Adam O'Brien. But this game, it's a toss of a coin, and the only reason I'm going to side with you with a Parramatta 1-12 is because of where the game is getting played. Because if this was in Newcastle, it's going to sound crazy, but if this was in Newcastle, I'm probably looking at Newcastle 13+. But I'm going to side with Parramatta. I'm going to go 1-12. I'm going to stick with you. But Baxter, let's keep moving. Let's move into the Friday night game. You've got the Parramatta Eels taking on the Newcastle Knights. Now, Parramatta, they still haven't hit their stride yet this year. They're still struggling. Whereas Newcastle, we just spoke about, didn't play the best game against the Cowboys last week. However, they come into this game with a lot of hope. They've won a couple games now. They're playing good football. They tested the back-to-back premiers the week before, only just going down to a field goal, and now they've only gone just down to the Cowboys. But let's look at the team list. You've got Clint Gufferson, Micah Sivo, Will Penasini, your mate Sean Russell, Hayes Dunster, Dylan Brown, Mitchell Moses, Rimu Craig comes into that lineup, Josh Hodgson, Junior Paulo, Sean Lane, Ryan Madison, Jermaine Hopgood, Supercoach fans, he's back in the starting lineup. You've got Bryce Cartwright in the 14.